So I want to talk about the second big Daily Wire controversy of the last week, and that is Ben's dangerous
essence.
My essence. his very appearance.
My spirit.
At Podcast Movement. I think we have video here of Ben's assault on Podcast Movement. Just terrifying.
Get a picture?
1, 2, 3.
God bless you.
Hey, thank you.
All right, Ben, punch with me.
Heroin.
You reached right for him. Look at that.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, thanks for everything you do. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you. I'm excited about it.
That's great. Thank you so much for coming. This is huge.
Of course, of course. Thanks a lot.
Unbelievable.
So that heroin.
Yeah. I just want to say exactly what happened. I haven't really spoken about this yet, but I actually do think it's an important story. And that's that Podcast Movement is the premier gathering of podcasters. It's an industry conference that happens every year. I spoke at it last year. It was here in Nashville at the Gaylord. And this year, because the Daily Wire is selling more and more of our own shows as we bring more and more of our sales infrastructure in-house, we sponsored Podcast Movement. You can go to their website, look under sponsors, there's Daily Wire, and we purchased a booth on the floor at the conference. Well, a very good friend of ours, someone who's been very good to the company, who in the podcast space was also having a retirement party that evening, the evening of Podcast Movement. So Ben and I flew into Dallas to attend this guy's retirement party, slap him on the back, thank him for everything that he's done for the Daily Wire over the years. While we're there, we stopped by the conference that we are sponsoring to visit the booth that we paid for and our employees who've been there all week working and doing the important work of helping us with our ad sales. And you can see from the video what happened. You know, it's kind of a lightly attended conference. There's not like 25,000 people or something, but the people who were there, people came up, they wanted to get a picture with Ben. We were probably on the floor for all of
5 minutes.
5 minutes, yeah, maybe 10. We made a loop, walked around, went to the retirement party, came home. I wake up the next morning and I see these tweets, and I'm going to read the tweets in their entirety because I think that they're so remarkable. This was put out by the official Podcast Movement Twitter account. Hi, folks. We owe you an apology before the sessions kick off for the day. Yesterday afternoon, Ben Shapiro briefly visited the PM22 Expo area near the Daily Wire booth. Though he was not registered or expected, we take full responsibility for the harm done by his presence.
Mm-hmm. Good for them.
Yeah,
there's no way around it.
That's right. At least they didn't shuck off the responsibility. You know?
There's no way around it. We agreed to sell the Daily Wire a first-time booth based on the company's large presence in podcasting. The weight of that decision is now painfully clear. Shapiro is a co-founder. A drop-in, however unlikely, should have been considered a possibility. Many in our community are appalled, not just by this incident, but by our choice to take money from the Daily Wire in the first place. As a Twitter user said, this was signed off on by a human. Yes, during event planning, the dangerous nature of the company's messaging was overlooked. Many in our community are appalled, not just by this incident, but by our choice to take money from the Daily Wire in the first place. I'm repeating myself. The final two tweets. Those of you who called this unacceptable are right. In 9 wonderful years growing and celebrating this medium, Podcast Movement has made mistakes. The pain caused by this one will always stick with us.
Forever.
We promise that sponsors will be more carefully considered moving forward. Just to clarify, no Daily Wire representatives were scheduled to appear on panels, and Shapiro remained in the common space and did not have a badge. If you have questions, we're here to talk. Thank you for reading, and we hope you'll continue to join us from here on out.
I have to tell you, when I first saw this, I had my usual reaction to everything, which is I cracked up. I mean, I started laughing. And then, first of all, I started to feel resentful because I haven't received an apology, and I've been here 7 years. That's one thing. But the other thing is, it actually isn't as funny as it could be, you know? I mean, whenever anybody attacks George Soros, who is actually an evil plotter trying to destroy America, everybody said, well, you're anti-Semitic, you know, because George Soros passed through a kind of fog of Jewry at some point. You know, and here we have, you know, like a mist, like the Incredible Shrinking Man. He went through this kind of radioactive thing. You know, an actual Jew is harming us simply by existing. And I have to say, I thought about that for a minute, and I thought, well, what's the answer to his existing?
Right. What's the solution?
And I thought this actually isn't as
Maybe
funny.
a final.
It's not. It's not. You know, it's not. I want a final solution to that. I thought, like, this actually isn't as funny as I thought it was for the first half hour. You know?
If Ben's mere presence does harm, then the only way to prevent harm is to ensure that Ben
has no presence.
The joke's on them because, honestly, I didn't tell anyone, but I did leave some of my aura in the HVAC. So well after I had left, it still lingered there. And I'll be there for years.
Well, I appreciate that you have a sense of humor about it, but it's not funny. It is an actual rhetorical call to violence.
Yeah.
A rhetorical call to violence to say
with
that
Walsh here, and he's a dangerous
that's right.
man.
If someone's presence causes harm, then the obvious conclusion is that they must not have presence. The second thing is we gave these people our money. So I immediately read these and I go to DM the president of Podcast Movement to figure out what the hell, right?
How to get your money back.
He's preemptively blocked me on Twitter. So I call some of our pals around the movement, you know, people who we've done business with, and ask them to apply some soft pressure. I say, listen, I'm going to have to go to war with Podcast Movement. I mean, this is an outright act of bigotry. Yep. That is the actual correct word. Mm-hmm. It is an outright expression of bigotry. But I don't want to do that. Please apply some soft pressure and try to get these guys to retract this statement and issue an apology and commit to having the dominant podcast conference in the country be inclusive of the 6th largest podcast company in the world and one of the 10 largest podcasts in the world. It seems like maybe we should be present at Podcast Movement. So people made a few phone calls, and then I hear later that evening from one of the owners of Podcast Movement. And I'm going to tell you what the guy said, and I'm going to say something about myself that I'm actually a little embarrassed about, which is I cried on this phone call. My voice started to break. I got so emotional. I've never gotten emotional over one of these things before. We get canceled. We get called racist. We get called whatever, right? And, you know, I take it. It doesn't bother me. Obviously, Ben's got a great perspective on it. But here's what happened. The guy calls me, and I'm just going to hear him out. I'm going to hear what he has to say, hoping maybe that this is the resolution we've been looking for. And he starts the call. He's got a great radio voice.
All these guys have great radio voices.
Yeah. Truly. And he says, Jeremy, you know, so-and-so gave me your phone number, and I just wanted to let you know that we have a policy here at Podcast Movement that the talent not appear. You'll notice, like, Joe Rogan has never appeared on our stage. We don't like for the talent to appear. And so Ben showing up caused some of my other sponsors to be angry because they want to know, why can't our talent be here if Ben can be here? Garbage. And so I just want you to know this statement is a reaction to other sponsors being angry that their talent didn't get equal treatment.
That's why I called for his extermination.
That's right. And he said, and
a little leap, but yeah.
He said this was not in any way political. Huh. And when he said it, I'm embarrassed about it. I got so adrenalized and so upset. And I said, not in any way political. And I just started reading from the tweets, the danger of this company, the dangerous
endless pain.
The pain that will be with us forever, the harm caused by his very presence. So that, you're saying that isn't political? You're saying that that's because he showed up. By the way, podcast hosts appear on all of their panels. It's just nonsense. The whole fracking conference is for podcasters, for people in podcasting. I said, you're going to tell me this isn't political? You called, you canceled us from the play. You sent us an email that said we can't be here anymore. No, we did not ban you from the conference. Your people are there now. Right, because I told them to ignore your stupid email and go to our booth anyway. I said, there's no one else in the world who would be subjected to this kind of bigotry, and you get away with it. You could not treat a black man this way. You could not treat a lesbian woman this way. You could not treat anyone on the left in any way. Disney would have walked out of the conference, right? Like iHeart and Westwood One, Cumulus, all would have walked out of the conference. But you can treat a conservative this way with unadulterated bigotry on the page. Anyway, what I told the guy, well, I didn't say all that. What I said to the guy was, take down the tweet, apologize for the tweet, and commit to keeping this conference a neutral place for all podcasters. And he said, well, now the problem with that is that just makes it political on the other side. And I said, yeah, I can't unstep on the fucking rake for you, pal. This is an actual, take it down and apologize. I said, well, I'll have to talk to my people about whether or not we can do that. So, of course, the day goes by, it doesn't get taken down. The next day goes by, it doesn't get taken down. Then I get a call from the guy, and he says, hey, we're going to have a meeting. The conference is over now, and we're going to have a meeting on Tuesday. Everybody needs Monday off because we put in a hard week's work. Showing prejudice to Jews. Hard day's work. He said, but I'm going to get the team together and see if maybe we can make a new policy. He said, and he did offer me my money back. We had paid $30,000 or something like that for the booth.
I hope you took it.
No, I told him to keep the money.
Really?
Yeah, I said, I don't care about the $30,000. I care about my $200 million business that you injured. I care about my 250 employees whose jobs you put at risk by using your leadership position in the podcast movement to communicate that our very existence causes harm and that the words that we speak are dangerous and cause pain that will never cease. That's what I'm concerned about. Fracking apologize. So he calls me after the conference is over, says, we're going to get together, craft a policy. Maybe we'd like Ben to be on stage with somebody from the left next year. Maybe we'd like you guys to help us with the policy. Or maybe we'll decide in our policy just not to have politics from either side going forward, but one way or the other, we'll let the new policy be our statement.
Great.
And I said, well, I'd love to work on that policy if you take down the offensive tweets that call for the annihilation, essentially, the rhetorical annihilation of one of my close friends and business partners, and commit to not doing that in the future. I said, and while you're at it, make sure that your apology is just as groveling as the apology that you put out for taking our money. Because a bigot who commits bigotry really should grovel a little bit for all of our forgiveness. Like that's a thing to actually, that actually causes harm, that actually causes pain. So he says, well, I'm going to call you on Tuesday if you'll hold off on hitting us until Tuesday. And I said, I will hold up. I will let you have your meeting.
Don't worry. Backstage is Wednesday.
That's right. Backstage is Wednesday. So yesterday at 6 p.m. our time, I get a call from the assistant of the man who preemptively blocked me on Twitter, who's the president of Podcast Movement. And she says, the president of the movement would really like to talk to you. Could you get back to us? So we returned the call probably within a half hour. They got back to us today and said, very much would like to talk to you. Our first availability is September 14th at 3 p.m.
Stop it.
2 weeks from now at 3 p.m., I can finally get on the phone with a guy who preemptively blocked me after apologizing for taking my money and saying that the existence, the mere presence of my friend and business partner causes harm. This is, I said it before, this is a kind of bigotry that could not be expressed against any other kind of person that exists in our country today. And there will be essentially no consequences for these sons of bitches. Yeah. They'll blow us off. They'll talk to us in a few weeks, and maybe they'll write a policy. The tweets will stay up. There will be no backlash. People will celebrate them.
They've already lied to you when they said this is not political. This is
lied to our face, saying it's not political.
Yeah. And I'd like to point out here that, again, there are a lot of podcast companies there, and they are all supposedly in favor of things like open debate and talking about things. And I can guarantee you this. If they had said about, say, John Lovett at Pod Save America, he'd come in and visited the Crooked booth.
That's right.
And they had said that his very presence caused harm, and therefore he was banned. I would have been openly mocking them, as would you.
Of course.
Online. We would have gone to Podcast Movement. We would have threatened to take our booth off the floor for that sort of thing. We would have said that we would not co-sponsor the event. As far as I'm aware, 0 companies. I think maybe there's one guy, Dan Granger.
From Oxford Road,
who put out a statement saying this is unacceptable and ridiculous. Not a single other company, including companies that make tens of millions of dollars off my show personally, right? I'm the one whose essence is threatening.
That's right.
My herbal essence is threatening.
Our own representatives in this space who have made tens of millions of dollars could not be bothered to validate our right, to publicly validate our right to exist.
Plus, when they do this to people like, what's that guy's, what's his name?
Alex Jones.
Alex Jones. The guy's at least a loon, whereas you're pretty much a conservative.
But again, this isn't based on anything Ben said.
Right. This is correct. I was there. I didn't have a conversation with anyone about politics, but even beyond that.
But you represent ideas and all that. But those ideas are central to American thought. They always have been. You've never come on and said anything that made the rest of us like move away. It's just your presence, of course, has. But that's
as I've said before. I am not sure that it's bewildering to me on a personal level because you guys all know me. You've known me for years. The gap between me and the perception of me as highly dangerous human,
Yeah.
and then me in reality is maybe the greatest gap between supposed dangerous human and person in reality that I've ever conceived of. But it's the fact that people listen to the show,
right,
and people watch what we do, and that's what scares the hell out of them.
Yeah.
And so what they are actively attempting to do now is cast an entire side of the political aisle out of the movement,
which is central.
And if there's not solidarity, I mean, this is so indicative of there were some people online, who aren't part of the podcast movement space. Who, Ryan Grimm at The Intercept, who's on the left, or Yashar Ali, who's on the left, who came out and said this is like insane and ridiculous.
Of course.
But in the podcast,
and good on them,
right? Good for them. In the podcast space, where are you guys? Where are you guys? So I'll say this: the day before, actually not the day this happened, we had a meeting with one of the companies that we do business with, and somebody at that company said, "You know what I'd love to do? I would love to broker like a joint show between you and the people of Pod Save America." And I said to them, that's never going to happen. And the reason it's never going to happen is because these people do not want us to be a company that is on the air. They do not want our company to exist. I mean, Dan Pfeiffer from Pod Save America literally went on MSNBC and said that we should be quashed because we have too much reach. I've said many times, I say on my show routinely, I say, if you want to know, people always ask, how do I discern the facts in an opinion podcast from the opinion? So what I always say, literally every time, is listen to my show, listen to Pod Save America. The stuff where we're saying the same stuff, that's the core of facts. Everything else is an opinion takeaway. That's at least a good rule of thumb. Okay? So listen to their show.
That's right.
They would never, in a million years, say that anyone should listen to the show. In fact, they would say that the show should come off the air. And so the whole predicate of us having a functioning republic is the idea that there are a bunch of people I disagree with who should be allowed at things like a neutral free speech space like podcast movement. And literally no one at that event, filled with these companies that do free speech for a living, no one, except for Dan, literally no one, said a public word to chastise podcast movement for this. That's insane to me.
But this is the key.
But this is, they take down libs of TikTok for basically putting the left on video. It's just holding a mirror up to what they are. It's the mirror that does it. When you're a vampire, you don't want to look at it.
But you hit the nail on the head, Jeremy, which is that they're going after Ben because Ben is the big guy. He's the big dog in the space, and you have giant reach, Ben. And so this is what really spooks me about this. You have giant reach because you are as mainstream as it gets. So when they say Ben Shapiro is too far, I say, you ever listen to my show? You ever, are you kidding me? Ben Shapiro is as mainstream as it gets. So what they're really saying is the entire right is gone. This is when Joe Biden says, listen, some Republicans are good Republicans, but the MAGA Republicans, by which he means any
everyone.
Republican, by which he means statistically everyone, other than Bill Kristol and his 4 friends who have tea together, 100% statistically of the Republican Party is in a sort of sometimes kind of way MAGA Republicans.
But
He's saying get rid of half the country.